Political analyst James Dorsey is now joining us from Singapore to shed more light on the latest developments. Good morning, James. Thanks for joining us on the program.
Pleasure to be with you. Good morning.
Now, fresh Israeli airstrikes targeted a shelter school, killing over 100 civilians in eastern Gaza, making it one of the most deadliest attacks since the war started. Are there any chances that we can see a ceasefire anytime soon, given the intense round of negotiations being held by Qatar, Egypt and the US?
Various ways of reading this, of course. It could well be that Israel is striking hard in advance of those negotiations. Clearly, the pressure is mounting, also from the United States, even if it is not willing to go as far as suspending arms sales to Israel. But nonetheless, the pressure is mounting. The fundamental differences between Hamas and Israel remain, which is Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire and a withdrawal, possibly a staged withdrawal of all Israeli troops from Gaza, whereas Israel wants a temporary ceasefire in which there is an exchange of Hamas-held hostages for Palestinians imprisoned in Israel, but then wants that war to continue.
That they want a temporary ceasefire, and yet they're intensifying their bombardment in advance of negotiations, as you said earlier in the piece, before the ceasefire comes into effect. Is that your analysis?
Well, I think what I'm saying is that's a possibility. The fundamentally right or wrong, and I think wrongly, the Israelis believe that the greater the military pressure, the more chances are that Hamas is going to make concessions. The opposite has proven to be true. And they're caught in a catch-22, basically, because on the one hand, these high casualties, this degree of devastation of Gaza is doing immense reputational damage to Israel, more than I think Israelis realize. And on the other hand, there are attempts to try and reduce civilian casualties, for example, by declaring safe zones is self-defeating. And what I mean by that is the Israelis declare a safe zone. They encourage people to go there. People will go there, but it's 1 and 1 is 2, that among those people that go there will also be members of Hamas. And that then makes it legitimate for Israel, in Israel's eyes, to strike at that safe zone. And therefore, this notion of a safe zone is really quite meaningless.
Okay, now, Israeli forces have claimed that the school was a Hamas command center, and it has only targeted civilians over the course of this war. And now the US is preparing to release another $3.5 billion to Israel for the purchase of American weapons. What's your analysis on these developments, and do you believe that Iran could heavily attack Israel in the near future?
I think that the Iranians, as well as Hezbollah, are going to wait to see what happens with the ceasefire negotiations. They don't want to provide an excuse to the Israelis for not going to the ceasefire negotiations, or for complicating those ceasefire negotiations. I think the Iranian position of Iran, as well as Hezbollah, both of which have threatened revenge for the killing of senior officials in Beirut and Tehran, both of them are going to wait and see what happens on Thursday, assuming those ceasefire talks do take place on Thursday, before they then consider what their next move is.
Okay, now Israel has repeatedly warned Palestinians to move away from their homes. How is the ongoing displacement and destruction within Gaza affecting the socio-political landscape, particularly regarding the future of Hamas governance?
I think basically there's no other structure, Palestinian structure at this moment in Gaza, except for Hamas to take over the administration once the guns fall silent. Now, there's going to, as much as there's probably going to be a reckoning with Netanyahu, the prime minister in Israel, once the war ends, that's probably going to be true with Hamas in Gaza. Now, having said that, Hamas does have a popular base, even if there are probably many Palestinians who feel that this war is on their backs. And at the same time, Hamas's popularity, not so much in Gaza, but certainly in the West Bank, has grown over the course of the war.
Okay. James, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.